Hello, people. I don't know. How are we doing today? I can't speak for all of we about how we are doing. My camera is kind of tilted here. Doesn't. All right. Yes, I cannot speak for all of we. Three-month anniversary. It's amazing. It is. This is the first programming stream in a long time. It's not going to be too intense because, like, you know, I'm just chillaxing for a bit. But I'll explain officially what we're going to do after we've given enough time for slackers to get here. But it's something I've been waiting to do for a long time, and I think now is the time to do it. Okay, I'll be back in a second. We're going to give people another couple of minutes to show up. Something like that. Perfect stream to compute modular inverses to. The Chai Latte Club. I don't know how that would work, except that everybody would make their own chai latte at home when I make one. I mean, that would be a good Chai Latte Club. I'm not going to have one right now. I'm having an iced tea with no calories in it. It's very different from a chai latte with a lot of calories in it. You have to write a paper on a CPU that implements an instruction set other than x86, x86-64. Any suggestions? Do MIPS, because academic people love MIPS. And it's also pretty easy to understand. And it has some really wacky things that other architectures don't have. Like after you branch to a location, it always runs the instruction after the branch instruction for pipelining purposes. Did I see Casey review 2 community debuggers? I saw part of that, yeah. I saw maybe the first part. Or part of the first part, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, academic people who love MIPS are all now really interested in RISC-V. I don't even know what it is, or RISC-V. How do you even pronounce it? I don't know. I don't know. All right, and if I've been watching the chess championship, no. It's sort of up on Twitch every time I open that page, but I have not been paying attention to it. You said I became a much happier person once I started rasterizing fonts on the fly. Can I explain why? Because you don't have to do all this annoying pre-process in order to use a font. You could just use it. It's great. It's great. Okay. Have I checked out Artifact, or do I have no interest in it? I have no interest in it. Zero. -0 interest in it. -0.00 interest in that game. What do I mean beyond the fly, like every draw call? No, not every draw call necessarily, although that's the new thing, right? But just, you just have a sprite atlas for the different glyphs, and on demand you rasterize each glyph into that texture. Do I have any interest in deep learning? Sure, why not? Do I follow Stephen Lavell's little games that he releases on his site? Not super closely. It's just, with those little things, I don't even mean specifically his games, but there's several people who their thing is like, I make a lot of little games, and I always play those, and I always feel like, oh, this part of this game is cool, but I would like the real game a lot more. That's usually how I feel. Not always. Of course, it takes a lot more effort to make the real game. So it is a trade-off. Do you parse TTF files or use some library? Well, I tend to use FreeType and Harfbuzz these days to rasterize glyphs, although STB TrueType would do a similar thing. But I think the general direction, if you were writing a font system now, would be going more in the direction of just rasterizing on the GPU. And the reason why you would do that is because keeping all these atlases and stuff isn't actually that useful if you want your text to move on the screen in a smooth way. Because, if it's rasterized into a texture and you're going to move it, you can't really move it in a subpixel way without it getting blurry, which is very noticeable for fonts. And so a slowly moving text, or even a quickly moving text, would like judder because, your speed is not going to be an integer number of pixels generally. Or if you want your text to slowly grow or shrink or something, you can't really do that well with the system that I do now. And so rasterizing on the GPU is probably where people are going to go with it, at least for games. It is slower to do that, probably. It takes a lot of fill rate, but GPUs have mega fill rate to burn at this point. And so I feel like that's where things are going to go. Is there a new compiler demo soon? I don't know. There will be a new compiler demo when I do a new compiler demo. I haven't been working on compiler things. So there is, I've done some progress toward the next demo, but obviously not enough to do the next demo. So Can't those games inspire me? Sure, it's just they haven't been a reliable source of inspiration in the past, so I don't go to them. And again, I'm not talking about anyone's specific games. I'm just saying that whole genre generally. But they then aren't hinted, right? Well, no, there's nothing to prevent you from looking at the hinting information and doing that, or, you know, I mean, if you're gonna render a language like Arabic, for example, you need a lot more than hinting, right? Well, I guess most of that happens at the high level. Anyway, I mean, I haven't actually tried this for real, so I can't really tell you what kinds of things come up. With regard to the you know, pixel tweak form of hinting, I feel like that only matters at small font sizes, first of all, which you don't really have almost ever anymore. And then secondly, I don't think there's a reason you couldn't do that on the GPU anyway. So, and the third thing is, again, actually, if you're going to render your fonts continuously, like if they're going to move slowly, or if they're going to grow or shrink slowly or anything like that, then hinting becomes a harder problem because you don't want it to be discontinuous. You know what I'm saying? Like if you hadn't nudged things over by a pixel and then you decide to all of a sudden because the input parameters are slightly different, then that's going to be a noticeable visual discontinuity that's going to disrupt what you're trying to do with regard to making a smooth thing. So, you know, does FreeType allow you to get vertex data? Well, I'm not sure, but it's not actually that hard to parse a TTF file and get the splines out, which is, I think, what research papers tend to do. Sign distance field fonts are more appropriate for moving text. I'm not sure that I agree. Sign distance field is fine, but it's not really good for high quality text, I don't think. It's too late to say happy birthday. No, of course not. You just said it. Thanks. Doesn't TTF include a lot of curve math stuff that is not exactly easy to do on GPU, or at least not very efficient? Well, it's all splines, right? Splines are not that hard by modern standards on a GPU. Am I familiar with Eric Langel's slug libraries for GPU font library? I have heard of it. I have not tried to use it, so I can't tell you anything about whether it's good. Big Fox is saying you think you'd translate the hard curves into as many vertices as needed. Well, some approaches do that, but actually some approaches literally just like draw a giant triangle, including pixels that are outside the shape and everything, and just evaluate all the splines, you know, at each pixel. Like, I think. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. How can you create terrain with a height map? Can you suggest any tutorial or book? Just start typing it in. What you know, you obviously know what a height map is if you're saying that. So come up with a height map and then draw the triangles. Like, you would have to give me a more specific question for me to know really what you're asking there. Multi-channel sign distance fields can do sharp corners. Yeah, it's not just sharp corners I'm talking about, but like in general in a font. Like you don't, I don't know. I'm going to reserve ranting about it. I'm not going to take too hard of a position on that because I haven't, like I said, I haven't actually done any of these techniques. So my opinions about it are the opinions that you would have like before you start doing the real work. And those tend to change after you do things. So I'm just going to not say anything more on that. What is the difference between splines and Bezier curves? Bezier curves are a specific kind of spline. What would be my ideal method of text editor customization? I don't want to think about my text editor at all. I don't want to spend time customizing it. This is like the number one thing that everybody, you know, somebody starts making something and then they're like, even not a text editor, but like anything. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to make it great for people to get really way into this and like super geek out on how to make it their way. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I want to program, you know? So, yeah. And then to the extent that I do want to customize it, like have a key run a command or something, I want that to be as simple as possible, and I don't want to have to think about anything, and I want it to be super robust and just frickin' work, right? Which does not describe Emacs. Okay, let's start talking about what we're actually going to do. Let's run a level. Let's run a level here. When we started programming this game engine, it was in 2D. And not only was it in 2D, but characters just sort of teleported from square to square, as they often do in 2D grid-based games. And now we've upgraded it to a 3D game where guys like animate and all that, right? While preserving the same gameplay rules. And there's a lot of complicated gameplay rules in this game. That's sort of the point of the game. And the rules involve, you know, what happens when one thing tries to go into a grid square when a certain state is active and maybe another thing is there or not, or what. So like here, you know, I can push this thing onto these lily pads, and you know, there's some gameplay rule that says, hey, I'm supported if there's a lily pad in my same square, right? And I'm supported if there's a wall in my same square. I'm not supported if there's just water below me, but my character right now will not. This guy doesn't have like a blocked animation, but the movement code is preventing me from going in there. And normally on most characters, we would actually play a blocked animation. This guy doesn't have most of his animations, actually. It's part of why he looks weird. Anyway, hold on. Let me get my notepad out for things that certainly that I want to write down, and maybe, as we often do, we'll be generating our to-do list. Yeah, so the way this all was implemented originally was just, so originally it was 2D with teleporting movement, and then it was upgraded to 2D with a straightforward kind of movement that interpolated your guy from square to square, or these stones or whatever. So if I would push this, that would make all these interpolations happen, right? One by one. So let's slow the time down. If I walk south from this square to the square below me, then what that does is it sets up this thing called a visual interpolation struct that says which square I'm coming from and which square I'm going to and how much time has elapsed and all that. And then people do with that what they're going to do. Originally, it was always either a very simple linear interpolation or a teleport. There are actual teleports in the game rules, so those have to actually still be teleports, even though we're doing nice graphics and stuff. Okay. So it's an enemy here. Yeah. So that's like this struct, which is really kind of big right now. It's probably bigger than it needs to be. But anyway, it's a lot of parameters for controlling, like, hey, here's where we started and here's where we ended up and all this. And the first thing I'm going to do today is maybe just start cleaning this out, because I don't really know if we need, for example, all 4 of these parameters. Like, I don't really think that's a thing. We'll explain why there's a physical visual difference in a little bit, I think. We can certainly delete these comments and, well, and then we're going to start messing around with this physically moved situation. Anyway, so the reason why this needs more work is the following. So there's rules. Okay. When an object is riding on another one, like the way that stone is there, I'm going to slow down time a little bit so I can talk about this. When I kick off this next stone, the gameplay rule is it'll push the lily pads. It makes waves that push the lily pads to the south, right? So here we go. And the lily pads will start moving in this stepwise fashion, right? And they're carrying that stone with them. And the way that works is there's a linear move set there on the visual interpolation, and you can see these coordinates, every time it moves and clears. And what happens is when the lily pad is going to move, it says, is anybody on top of me? And right now that happens via a really stupid search operation, right? There's no consistent, like right now entities don't have a consistent notion of who they are supporting, or entities. You could do it either I am supporting these other entities, or you could have for any particular entity, I am supported by this other entity, which is probably better in one way because you only have to store one number, but worse in the other way because the search operation that you actually need when things move is the other one. Like things need to know who they're supporting, right? Anyway. So when that lily pad moves south and it's got a rock on it, the lily pad moves with a visual interpolation, and the rock gets a visual interpolation that just says, oh, I'm synchronized with this other thing. And so they like both move. And so the lily pad says, oh, my start is this position and my end is this position and my move type is linear move. And then the rock also says, well, my move type is linear move, and maybe we set this stuff, but it doesn't matter because what we actually do is we set this sync ID to the lily pad, and then when the rock every frame wants to update, it says, oh, this thing has a sync ID. Let's look at who it's synced to and move the amount that they moved. Okay. That all is fine until you start having more complex, crazy situations like the ones that we are trying to have. I should have just done some undos there instead of all this. So like, if I want to do stuff like, I want to get on here, well, first of all, what happens is I'm trying to get on the thing and I started going too late and the thing moved out from under me before I got into the square, but after I decided to move into the square. So that protection mechanism that I said about making you not try to go into the water didn't really work in this case, right? And I drowned. And that happens a lot. And that's based on the fact that right now the gameplay rules are very much still about essentially what integer grid index are things in, and that determines if they support me or not, right? So if the lily pad passes some invisible line between the target square that I'm going to and the one to the south of it before I actually get there, then that's bad news for me. Another thing is if I want to push this rock, like, okay, it's actually kind of working okay right now, but it kind of looks weird. There's all sorts of weird situations that happen, like, well, there I drowned again. But there's all sorts of weird situations that happen because of this idea that there's only one visual interpolation per entity that controls what happens to you, right? So, like, if you imagine like a set of 9 lily pads or something that was just moving through space. In fact, we could probably set this up. Let's do this. I just want to illustrate the point. Let's make a whole new level. Level sets drafts, and we'll call one lily test. And we're going to load this. We're going to save it as lily test. That's going to take a second because we add all this stuff to source control. Now, let's delete all this junk. We don't need any of these things. Don't need that. Don't need that. Going to get rid of all of this. We're just going to have, in fact, whatever. We're going to leave some land here, but we don't even need it. We're going to, where's the lily pads? Am I blind? Are they not here? Oh, there they are. Boop. Okay, so we're going to go. Oops. Okay. And then we'll edit the ocean, and we'll have it going in this direction. Let's just have it wrapping indefinitely. How big do I want it to be? 10, 10. Oh, wow. We've gradually been drifting north. All right, so select all this stuff. So 0, 0 is like down here, and there's not really a reason not to be near 0, 0, but like we might as well. Can I set wrapping this way? Yes, okay. So this is going to be a wrapping level, and oh God. Okay, we're going to set the ocean to just going like this. So we've got this like current, and it's a wrapping level. So, well, first test is this going to work fine? Let's just see. Should. So, you know, there's a little line there in the ocean where it wraps because we haven't like totally done that, and our camera, let's set up the camera in a better place. All right. But this is basically what we're talking about. Now the problem is, in principle, I should be able to walk freely around this platform. But the problem is that that's not really going to work very well, because my visual interpolation controls when I try to walk from square to square, but it'll get reset every time these lily pads move. And like, just, I think bad stuff is going to, yeah. Oh God. See what I'm saying? So, this is not a good, see, I just tried to walk north and like I couldn't, and who the hell, it's horrible, right? So the guy loses shadow on the right wrap. Yeah, it's like our shadow map isn't totally hip to all that. Actually, he's not anymore, but he was probably. Yeah. So this is a case where we did a relatively simplistic method of motion, and it worked for a long time. But we're at the point in building levels where we want to be able to do stuff like this and can't, right? So we need to fix this. And the way I'm going to fix it, I think, is just by doing the regular video game thing like you would do in any in any 3D game, or any maybe even 2D game, which is just, hey, if you're supported by something, then that thing knows that it's supporting you, and it just every frame carries you when it moves, right? And then that would be independent of the movement record controlling the player motion, right? And so then player motion could happen at the same time. Now that sounds simple, but the problem is that it interacts with a lot of other things, right? So one of the things about this visual interpolation system is that, it's in here. We're looking at the struct declaration. Is that, I don't know why I'm keeping this in this file. It should just be in the visual interpolation file. You know what? This is just a C++ habit of like, oh, I'm using it in this file, so I kind of need to declare it there. That's not true in this language, so I don't know why I'm doing it that way. Anyway, let's delete these comments. So, what was I going to say before I got distracted by that? Oh, yeah. So, there's this physically moved thing here that's a Boolean. And the reason that's a Boolean is just, we know that it's a grid-based game, and when we walk approximately across the line in between two grid squares, it's time for our physical presence to transfer from one grid square to another square, which of course has gameplay connotations. Like if there's a switch there on the ground, then now I'm pressing it, or whatever, right? The old assumption is that that could only happen one time for each visual interpolation, and that when that happened, that's when we modify the proximity grid, which is the data structure that accelerates your searches for what is where, which right now is kind of a joke anyway. And also, well, there's gameplay rules about, you know, what happens when at certain times. And those tend to run when physically moved is set, newly set on a thing. Because it's like, oh, I see. This hadn't moved and now it has, so let's reevaluate whether a monster can kill this thing now because it's in a different square. And that's just a little too simplistic now because, you know, if these lily pads are moving left to right, and I'm walking north to south, then, ugh, that was hilarious. Then you actually might move between 3 grid squares, right? Like maybe the left to right crosses the line before my north to south crosses that line, right? So then you would go from the left square to the right square to the south square, right? So it's no longer true, for example, that there's only going to be one physical move per player motion. And that's what makes this a pain in the butt and means that we have to really change a lot of assumptions. But it'll be good because all these things will work much better when we're done. We basically have to transition this much more. Like when I was writing the engine, I was assuming it was going to be all about grid-based movement, but it really can't be. Really what it has to be is just general movement like you would have in any like action game with this kind of a top-down view, but then with controllers on top of it that talk about or that think about what grid square things are in and where they're going. So we need to like do that big switch. Everyone's talking about editors in chat, so whatever. Nobody cares about actual gameplay. Everyone wants to talk about editors. Any questions about these things that I just said? Because I really haven't thought through what I'm going to do at this point. It's just going to be starting to play with it and move it generally in the direction where it needs to go. Would the input send the player to a grid position or a full position? Well, so I think what would happen is, remember how I said, for example, the reason I don't drown walking off the land is because the higher level gameplay code looks there and says, hey, could I walk there? Oh, no, there's just water, so I'm going to drown. Well, if there's something that would support you there, like a lily pad, it would say, oh, there's a lily pad there. That's what I'm walking onto, right? And we actually have that already for some entity types, and we might just move that to be a general thing. Because like as much as I would drown getting on these lily pads from the land, I would drown a lot more if I didn't have this controller in there that tries to walk me to its current position, right? So there would basically be a controller that says, I'm walking from this square to this other square of this object I'm trying to go onto. And maybe if things are crazy and that thing is moving way too fast, like maybe the controller gives up after some amount of time, if the thing is too far away. But basically, if I walk from here, from where I'm standing to the lily pad to the south of me, it would say, I'm walking to the middle of whatever that entity ID is, right? Yeah. You'd expect a quicker animation like a jump when moving on to these lily pads. Maybe, but that shouldn't be necessary. And and it's not going to fix anything. Like making the animation faster is not going to fix the problem. It's just going to make the problem happen less often. The problem is still there. And especially like jumping from land onto these lily pads is a little bit of a problem, but like walking around on these is total garbage. Like it just can't, I'm not going to ship a game that works this way. I could probably make it a lot better by hacking it, but I would never really be able to solve the actual problem. Does that mean that you still use collision detection algorithms and physics solvers like non-grid 3D games do? Probably, except, I mean, we're not going to do like rigid body physics or anything like that, but we are going to do more of a general proximity detection, like, is there a lily pad in space in the general area where I'm trying to go? And is it close enough to support where I'm going to be or whatever, right? Yeah. So my initial goal, there's two places I could start. I could say that carrying no longer works by having this sync ID thing, right? I could say that carrying happens explicitly in a different way. I could leave the sync ID in there for stuff like pushing and pulling, which it really should eventually not be used for anything, but maybe pushing and pulling for now will get that. The reason that doesn't work is like, hey, I could be pulling something and then something else knocks it out of my grip in the middle of the pull, you know? So that's one place I could start. The other place I could start is with that assumption that there's only one physical move. I guess I really do need to start there because that's going to get in the way of anything else. Because as soon as, well, I mean, it's maybe not that bad because then I could walk around on these lily pads and the worst thing that could happen is, well, the worst thing that could happen is the system is confused about what square I'm in, which would be bad, but not as bad as drowning all the time. Well, that might cause me to drown all the time. I don't know. Why not have some kind of object position parenting so that child objects calculate their position by checking their parents? Well, you don't want parenting to be too strong because, like I said, something can come along and knock you off or whatever, right? So, yeah, it's not really that simple. Didn't I foresee this to happen when I planned the initial movement system? Maybe. I foresaw that what I was doing would probably not be good enough, but I didn't exactly know what the right answer was. And maybe I still don't know what the right answer is, but I have a better idea. Yeah, you know what? I could use a little more caffeine and a little more calories. So keep asking questions. I'm going to make a chai latte, and then we'll get going on the programming. Oh my God, it's going to be a giant chai latte. Oh no. Okay, I'm going to run out of milk soon. That's how many chai lattes I've been having. None of that milk went into cereal. It's all into chai lattes. In your Sokoban clone, you solved it like the lily pad is pushing the player forward like the user input. That would be one way of doing it, except the way that I do user input, it's buffered controller input. So like you tap keys and they can be buffered up. So that mapping maybe it wouldn't be very direct in this game, but that's one way you could do it. I need a chai latte emote. Someone, okay, what emotes do we need? We need chai latte, and we need gamer. That's two more emotes that we're gonna have. Can't you say that on lily pads, player is not moving, you're in a different referential frame? but the player is moving if he walks around. Like, lily pads aren't necessarily going all in the same directions. You could have one traveling east and one traveling south, and you want to walk from one to another, right? So you could have one character on each lily pad so that they're moving in different directions. Like, it's just not that simple. You know what I'm saying? In what sequence are the moving being calculated? If the platform objects always get calculated first, player objects should be able to adapt easily afterwards. Well, I mean, there's no defined order like that. I mean, you could do that, but that doesn't actually solve any of the problems that I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the real problem is there isn't a notion, there isn't like a solid notion of this thing is supporting this other thing and carries it with it. There is in the editor, interestingly, right? So if I, whoops, I'm in the wrong window. If I open the editor, I could say, here's 1438, well, this thing is going to be constrained to a grid because it's a wall type. But anyway, that's 1438. I can go to this and I can say this is mounted on 1438. And then I can move this one around and that goes with it, right? So this is exactly the kind of parenting you guys are talking about. We just don't use that system during gameplay. And the question is, well, maybe we should, or maybe we should do it a slightly different way. I'm not sure. I'm going to take a look at the code and all that. But I think the physically moved thing is going to be the first thing that I tackle because, again, that's an underlying assumption that's going to mess with anything that we do. But we need to swap build magazines. This is going to be the biggest chai latte ever. Am I planning to let the lily pad push the player through a portal or some other door which is not moving? Well, I mean, literally anything could happen. All right. Someone's asking, so the game will be a normal non-grid based movement game with a grid controller on that considers entities between a range to be a grid square and the current entity grids for will be calculated every frame. Maybe. We're going more in that direction. I don't know if we're going to calculate, like, you probably only need to calculate the grid square every frame for things that are moving. And you probably don't need to actually move it in the acceleration structure unless it changes. So we might cache that value and stuff. Does the undo system take into account timed movement positions? Well, you don't really. So undo is tied to player motion. So what happens is when you start a movement, we record the state. So any timed things that happen between your moves just all get undone. Which may not always be what you want, but it's pretty good. Okay, people, check it out. I've got my Winnie the Pooh cup that I got in Thailand, and it's very large. And I've got a massively frothy chai latte. I have to mix it up a little though to get all the goodness. All right. Yeah. Look at that. Look at that, man. That's so good. Homemade chai latte. Can't beat it. What if two moving tiles run into each other? Do you do movement transfer? No, like we're not trying to model momentum really in this game for the most part. But we do want to detect robustly what happens. Like there are well-defined things that happen in each of those cases. So lily pads will stop if they hit other moving lily pads and so forth. Oh, so good. What if a moving object had an icy, slippery surface? Well, we don't have those in this game. You assume the worst case scenario are lily pads moving in opposite direction like in a Frogger game. Sure, so, so this level, like it takes a little bit to set it up, but, whoops. The point of this level is that you get a bunch of lily pads going. Whoops, I maybe didn't want to reverse that one. Let's let it go by. So anyway, I like use these. So yeah, there's not like a coherent like one other plane that you could stand on, right? It's like you need to be able to solve bananas puzzles like this one. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. This is a relatively hard level, by the way. Yeah. It's not a beginner level. Is there a ship date in mind for the game? We have a vague date in mind, but we're not going to say what it is because, you know, there's a lot of work to do still. How is the language progress going? It's good, but we've been focused on the game for some months now. I will be switching back to working on the language soon. Like I always, especially during Christmas break, it's like I get a lot of good headspace due to not having to worry about running the rest of the company and always tend to do major things during that time. But I should be switching back to the compiler before Christmas, but you know, hopefully we can do, like what I would like to do is finish up the library revision before Christmas break and then during Christmas break do the macro thing. We'll see. Dude, this chai latte is so good. I've drank half of it already. Is it already way more comfortable than C, C++? Yes, it is, even though we don't have mature tools or anything. Okay. Is closed release still planned for the end of the year? Probably not, just because the only real reason is because Again, we shifted off working on the compiler for some months just to get the game further along. And that's a good thing because it means we have a much more serious program as a test, right? And we fixed a lot of compiler bugs, but we haven't advanced the features very much since summer. So, we just changed the roadmap a little bit is what happened. We changed our priorities around. Since it's more comfortable, would I do game 3 in the new language? Absolutely. Yes. That is the whole plan. The plan ever since 2014 was to do this language, do a game in it to get the engine ready, and then do game 3 in the new engine. So it's all proceeding according to plan. Okay. That chai latte is some strong stuff. So I want to get rid of this physically moved member. And I instead want to say, we could for now just do a slow thing where we remove guys from the proximity grid every frame and re-add them if they move. Right? And then it's just an optimization to cache their positions. And that will probably force us to deal with the fact that we reevaluate gameplay. Like, we're going to have to maintain our own physically moved list. Like, okay. We need the cached version no matter what, because the game rule is that when somebody moves into a new square, certain things get evaluated. And we might change what those things are eventually, but right now it's like everything. Could the sync ID affect what tile to evaluate when the player moves between tiles, since it seems as if the evaluation is split in two? First, if user can move, and then what tile the player is standing on after the move. So if the player moves to a tile with movement, it would be invalid to evaluate its old position, but should rather be its new position. Yes, well, but that's correct. That's how it already tries to work, though. And it just doesn't always work that way, in part because of other parts of the system. Yeah. 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 Okay. So let's just start looking at this. I should have run a test before this to make sure nothing's broken, but I didn't. Let's do that. Let's try it at a 20. Let's make a release build. Because this is a relatively major change, and some small set of levels still fail tests, but it's pretty small. I actually didn't stream a lot of this, but I think I streamed when I started going back and redoing the new way of doing timed recordings, but of course that took a little more work. Whoops. So let's just test it. See where we're at before we go monkeying with everything. I don't think I've ever tested it at a rate of 20 with the new system, but it should work. I don't know. Like those levels never used to test correctly. All right, let's not have too many spoilers. Any other questions while the spoilers are spoilering? Am I going to have a sausage level? Probably not. Can testing still be dangerous business? It can. Testing can be dangerous business. What would happen if there was a block higher than Lilypad but lower than the character's height? Would they get knocked off? Yes. They should. Like the only way to make, because it's a grid-based game, the only way to make that happen is if that block is in transit up or down. But yes, in principle, that should happen. We failed a couple. What are my thoughts about aspect-oriented design? I don't know much about it. Like, it doesn't seem that exciting to me. But maybe I don't know what's supposed to be excited about it. Do. Dude, we're failing levels. I don't like how many we're failing. I mean, it's fine because we just need that. We just need that as a baseline to compare against to see if I break anything more. But I had thought that we had the number of fails down to like 2. Maybe I didn't check in some recordings. Or maybe I think not everything is quite right in the timed playback, and we're playing back at a much faster rate. And that might exacerbate weird, like, 1 frame off issues. Are the same people from The Witness working on this one? Some of the same people from The Witness are working on this one. Team's a little bit different at this point. How can you join the development team? It's not easy. Do we have dedicated QA people at this point? No, not yet. We probably will have some when we come to shipping. That's a level I just designed the other day. Do I plan to release this with the editor? I don't know. Like, it's just a lot of work to do that. So we might do it, but it's going to be hard enough to release the game. So we'll see. Like at one point, I released the editor for Braid and supported mods on it and stuff, and not that many people really used it. So I'm not sure it was worth it. But we'll assess that when we get close to being done here. Yeah, I don't want to spoiler everything.
The truth can be dangerous business because of yourself. You don't know why. Huh? Well, I'm just giving you with the ideas. Telling the truth can be dangerous business. If you don't know yourself, then you don't know why. Oh, is that brilliant? Telling the truth can be dangerous business. Honest and popular don't go hand in hand. If you admit that you can play the accordion, no one will hire you in a rock and roll band. But we can't sing our hearts out. And if we're lucky, we'll no neighbors complain.
All right. We'd have our dangerous business. Did I ever release source code for Braid? Nope. Nope. Okay, so we fail 11 levels out of 276 right now. And I think that is mostly still playback. Oh, one of them is my new level. What? Let's go look at that. But I'm just going to save which ones those are. It's a little weird because I don't know if we would get the same list. Really, bro? What? Let's play that back slower. 10. Test. Wait, what? Why does he push the mirror in the water? Oh, it might be just an old recording. Okay, don't look. Spoilers. Whoops. Yeah, I think it's a recording from before I changed the level. All right, let's test that. Let's do it at 20x. Let's do it at 30x. All right, well, I think I just changed the level after, because that's a level I just made like on Friday or something. All right. Okay. So we're going to say we're failing 10 tests right now. And that's just how it is. Oh, mirror slide. Oh, rotating cavalry space doesn't play back? What? Maybe I just didn't record that one. Because I just made that level as well. Let's try it. All right, so we're going to record. Whoops. This is a modification of someone else's level that had already tested correctly, but I made a more chill version. So, and again, it probably is a case of I tweaked it after making the test. Or maybe I just didn't save a test. I don't know. All right. Can I please give some insights into how I write my game loop, i.e. fixed time update question mark? Right now, there's a maximum amount of time that we'll simulate for, and if we want a time step more than that, we just iterate over the outer loop doing that amount of time. I think it's like 0.05 seconds right now, which is actually kind of big. Maybe I made it smaller. That's not, it's not conclusive that that's the right way to do it. It's just that's what seemed like it would be sufficient for this game. Maybe save level hash into the file, and at the end of the batch, print how many are outdated. We could do that. The thing is, it's not totally obvious because you want people to be able to edit cosmetic parts of the level without it validating the test. So the hash has to know the difference between things that are cosmetic and things that are not, which is not always obvious because you might actually change, like right now, sometimes there are walls that are only there for visuals right now in the mockups, and you could delete those and the test is still valid, but you would delete them because you're replacing them with like actually better visuals. So I don't know, man. It's like me. If this becomes a problem, then we could do that. But I don't really think it's a problem. I think these through the roofs are just new levels. End mower. I don't know. We'll look at them. Rover Goblin Party failed. I thought I just recorded a test for that. might have not been checked in. It might not be playing back correctly. Anyway. So let's go back to what we're actually trying to do, which is this physically moved thing. We're making an array of things that are physically moved. And right now, the lower level interpolator tells us whether we should physically move, right? It returns a Boolean, and that actually makes those routines a little more complicated than they should be. But in reality, really what we should do is just call update visual position, which should also update the physical position, I guess. And then we should look at the physical position and see if it's in the same square where it used to be. And if so, then it physically moved. Okay, well, the first thing we can do, let me start making a list of things to do. The first thing we can do is say, this isn't a really blank piece of paper. Get something that is. Okay, so we could do the following thing. Just ignore the return value of update visual position, right? That tells us whether things should physically move or not. And we'll just say, you know what? We decide now if they physically move at this higher level loop, and you don't care. And then once that works, then we can go in and say remove the code returning those Booleans, right? So we split it into two things already, which we're going to need because it's a big change. Even this small part of the system that we're changing is a big change. Okay, so what do we need in order to do that? Well, we need to know what grid square the guy's in. And then we need to see if it changed, right? Or we could say update visual position, and we could just say, proximity grid update, do whatever you need if this guy moved. And then the proximity grid maybe has some way of knowing where the thing was. Right? Right. So we can make proximity grid update. That's going to need to happen really first. Because otherwise none of this other stuff can happen. Okay, so when we say, oh, there's this whole thing about the lilies. That we did that on stream a while back. The lilies all move on the same frame. Which I guess is fine. We'll just need to move where that happens. So we're going to make that a separate bullet point. Lily, auth, physically move. Okay. So we put things into this physically moved array. For anyone else who's in the same transaction, we move them at the same time. God, that's a little... well, we don't actually like move them. We just put them in this physically moved array, and then for everything in the physically moved array, we do stuff. A lot of stuff, honestly. Linear move is the main one that we're thinking about. Dude, gameplay code means special case if statements. Everywhere. Everywhere. Okay. We're going to get rid of sync ID, so maybe that goes away. I don't know. Boy, there's just a lot of stuff here. Mm-hmm. Do we need this num untimed physical moves? That's just for undo end frame, so that all goes away. Check for victory, that's fine. And then everything down here is fine, okay. This is a different thing that I need to fix, but I'm going to mark it. Not really to do with what we're thinking about right now. Okay. So, when we physically move people, we must be calling okay, we check and see if the square is blocked, and if it is, we don't allow ourselves to go there. Otherwise, we do. We do update physical position. Yes. Okay, really what we want to do is ask the proximity grid did this person move? We want to say, did this person move? We don't want proximity grid update because we still need to do, like, we don't want the proximity grid to move them behind the back because right now that happens down in here. And we want all this other stuff to happen, at least for now. We might be able to elide a lot of it later, but for now, we want this to happen. Okay, so, so should physically move, we're going to ignore that. Boom, update visual position. If, and then where is that? So, if proximity grid, if, let's just say needs physical move, well, is that the entity? Is it the entity? Yes. The entity, we could just do that. And that seems straightforward. So we're going to do all the other stuff that we used to do. And we just need to define needs physical move. Actually, right, we need this Lily thing. So we're going to say should physically move is needs physical move it. And I'm going to put this back this way. Because the lily pad is going to be a special case right now. Still. Hopefully we can unwind it and it won't matter eventually, but yeah. Okay, so needs physical move is just going to say, is the proximity grid square place that this is in? Oh, you know. See, there's all sorts of corner cases that are not going to work right. So like, if I teleport into the same square, then that should cost a turn and trigger a physical move. Even though the proximity grid will say, no, it's the same square. But you know what? I'm going to let that break, and we'll fix it later. Because I don't even know if we have any levels that depend on that. It would be very rare in this game that that would matter. Okay. All right, so proximity grid. I'm just going to put this in here. We don't usually do that much entity stuff here, but yeah, okay. And we're going to say needs physical move. I never remember. I think it is a pointer. Okay, so we don't need the pointer here. So that's the grid. And, well, we say index is position to index, whatever. If index is equal to e dot cached proximity grid index return false. Well, just say return. Okay, so we return bool. Okay, so this is not a thing yet. And it's, anytime you say cached anything, it's a little bit scary. But we're going to start dealing with it. So e.cached Okay, so if that was -1, we don't need to do anything. Otherwise, we remove this guy. We set it here. I mean, I guess that's it. I don't know. So we go to the base entity. And we say that's going to be a -1, and we're going to say, I guess everything here is no serialized by default. I mean, something bad probably happens with regard to the undo system or something, but let's see. Well, I don't know. I mean, we're gonna be on our, oh, let's run this level. All right. Whoop. Well, we're never finishing our thing. We're never finishing our interpolation. So something is already very broken. Let's reset. So if I, whoops. When a lot of moves buffer up like that, we accelerate time. Okay, so we moved. We're still in our linear move. I'm looking at this one thing that doesn't say cleared. I should just not draw the window when it says cleared. You know what I'm saying? Let's do that real fast. Where is that? HUD? No. I don't remember what file that's in. Moves HUD. Okay. So that's going to make it less spammy next time. So we've got a linear move. It's not done, so we're just going to make a debug build and figure out why. And we'll go to there. I mean, it's probably something very simple, like, see, the problem is I don't really know. I don't really know what proximity grid indices are the start and end. All right. So we're going to go here. How many are we considering? Hopefully one. One. Okay. Okay. We'll go down here. Index. Okay. We never set physically moved. I think we still should be doing that. I don't understand that. Oh, duh. Okay, we got to use visual position here. Haha. Physical position is the one that we're waiting to change. Or position. All right. Hey, I finished my move. I can move more. All right. Dude, I hate this character. So bad. We need to do some work on this character. That's all I'm saying. All right, well, I seem to be able to do some things. And it's a little bit startling that that worked as well as it did for how simple it was. That's always been broken right there, so we need to work on that. Let's try to get that timing a little better. There. No, two. Same thing. Same thing. Ah, come on, bro. Like, if I hit it after the interpolation continues, then it's bad news. That is stuff that we're going to fix. Dude, why am I always... Why is the timing so different? There we go. Anyway, that's supposed to be what you're trying to do in this level. Well, I mean, do I run all the tests? Because the next step would be, like I was saying, oh, no, okay. It is worse than it was before. Rocks like aren't sinking correctly. Right, I was wondering why the other stone wasn't at least sinking into the water. And the answer is because we just broke that. Question is why? Yeah, things just don't sync. Oh, it's stuck in a linear move. Ha ha ha. Okay. Flaw in my plan, people. This makes it a bigger change than it was going to be. So remember when I said we call it a physical move when the grid square that you're in changes. That would work fine if the grid were actually 3D. The grid is not 3D. The grid is 2D. I don't really want to make it 3D right now, or possibly ever, because most levels have a mostly 2D layout. So we're going to need, like, in addition to caching the 2D index, we're going to need to just cache a Z index separately and see if that changes. Right? Right. Let's do that. Let's do that. So we go back to proximity grid where we did our little thing. So we say index is not equal to cache proximity grid index or Z index. We're just going to have two integers. And oh, that's in grid like to XY index, Z index, int. Okay. And then okay. So we set both of these numbers. Let's just say we'll just compute Z index early. And we'll say Z index is like that. I don't know if that's the best thing to do. Actually, it isn't anymore because we care. Like usually, like for characters and stuff, all their anchor point is at the bottom middle of the character. So it's essentially at Z equals 0, which kind of makes Z behaving a little differently than XY in that respect. Let's just say undeclared identifier Z index. Okay. Let's see what happens here. Still don't sync. Oh, because well, there's several things that could happen, but one annoying thing is we're like using -1 here, but -1 is what things that are underwater are going to be. So like that's kind of messed up. Aside from that, I don't know. We are setting it. This position to index is not really right. Okay. Well, oh, well, when we remove things from grid, we got to reset this. Okay. That's not the problem, probably. I doubt that fixed anything. Okay, which level is this? It's 3 stone crossing, so let's start there. Still not going to sync? Yeah. So, oh, wait, what? Weird. The interpolation actually completes now. Oh, we just don't draw it for some reason ever. What? Why don't we draw that? Oh no, I'm in the wrong mode. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it never for some reason does that. And the reason is because I mean, if we slow down time, it's like snapping up like that. And once it's snapped up, it's that Z position computation. Once it's snapped up, that Z position computation isn't ever going to change. Okay, well, okay. There's 2 things going on. One thing that's bad, that's probably the most bad, is just see how that stone still has an interpolation on it. It's still trying to move. It's not allowing itself to finish moving, and that's because of some stuff that I put in actually on stream a long time ago that no longer makes sense. We were having one frame off kind of problems, and we said, let's not let things signal as complete until they have physically moved on a previous frame. Well, that used to make sense back when the visual interpolation was controlling all this stuff. It doesn't really make sense now. So that's also a thing on the to-do list, which is to go through and remove that Boolean that we're no longer paying attention to. So we're going to start doing that. This right here. We don't care if people think we should physically move. And that's going to propagate down into a few leaf functions. And then we're going to edit those leaf functions to take out the physically moved. In fact, here's what we're going to do is we're going to delete oh yeah, I put that in this file. We're going to delete that because I don't believe that anyone should care about it. So we're going to go update single visual interpolation. Like, this is just a wrapper at this point. Like, that doesn't even do anything. Does anyone else call that? Nope. I'm going to make that a separate item. Collapse. Update single visual interpolation. In these two things should be the same procedure now. This is just a stupid wrapper around this. So, all right. Well, this is not returning anything, and this is not going to return anything. And, well, all of this goes away. Well, okay, this goes away. We need the update guy position. Why was I doing the old D0 and old D1? That's old. All right, so update guy position versus yeah, like, yeah. Like, if this physically moved was false, we're returning. So we should be able to get rid of that. Hopefully we can get rid of all this complexity out of this thing. We might have introduced new weird errors where if time goes fast, something bad happens if we physically move and end our interpolation in the same frame. But that now, fixing that would be a job for our way higher up routine. It would just need to notice that both those things happened and do them in the correct order. So we're pulling all this complexity out of these lower level things. Okay. Update guy position. That doesn't return it. Should physically move anymore. This is a very complicated controller thing. It's not even a very good controller. It has some problems. So I need to work on that. Oops. What do we return? Okay. I hope we didn't need any of that. Okay. So we can get rid of that. That's initialization. This is a problem because we were using that value on the visual interpolation that we're now deleting to control this. I think we can get away with that down here. Oh yeah, we have this here. So we're going to cast that to Lily, and we're going to say authorized to physically move is false. So now we're no longer really using piggybacking on that value. Maybe some other people are still using that field. Yeah. So in falling, I don't know. This is just going to be something that we have to worry about. Okay, this is more... This is just this return value of move, which we don't want. We didn't catch them all. Right, all this complexity that we added, we are unadding, and we're probably going to break things horribly, let's be honest. But that's our job sometimes. Yeah. Okay, who the hell knows what's going to happen? Assertion failed. Line 386. As soon as I try to move. Assert false. Oh, because, right. We don't want that. We just want that. It used to be because there was a return and I deleted it. It's that kind of dumb mistake that is dumb and a mistake. All right, so my guy's moving around. Okay. Now it's just falling infinitely, which is better because it's realizing it's up in the air. It's not very good for gameplay, but we've got to figure out why it is popping upward. We probably just have a thing where we're snapping it when the interpolation ends. Like, okay, here's what I don't get. Maybe our falling timer is too fast, and we try to make it fall again while it's falling? Hope that's not too loud, folks. Okay, this is good. This doesn't look good, but it's good. I have to go in about half an hour. So hopefully we can tie this up and have something reasonable by then. Okay. So we're just going to get it into that looping state there like we just had. Okay. And then we're going to look at, I suspect it's something like that, like the falling timer is fast. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it's... Okay. So we're falling. Well, yeah. We keep trying to make it fall, but that actually shouldn't affect anything, honestly. Because we're returning. So that's actually going to make it keep falling. So it's really something about when the interpolation finishes, we're snapping it to somewhere that we shouldn't be because we changed the way it works. So let's go to, what do we do when we physically move? Because it doesn't look like it's getting all the way underwater. It looks like it's going part way and stopping, which is what you would expect. Oh, the z coordinate is going past our z epsilon. Yeah, you know what? The z epsilon should be 0.5, first of all. That's, it's not really an epsilon. Z. I mean, if something's greater than 0.5, we're going to call it in the upper square. Yeah. So that should make the rock like fall a little bit more, but not a ton. No, it doesn't look any different, really. It might be hard to tell. Well, that's fine. We're just going to do what we were saying before, and we're just going to step in and look at what's happening. I still feel like it has to do with the physical move. Like we do something there that's just not the right thing. So let's see. Really? Okay, we never get to physical moves of this thing. How about interps completed? Oh, it's completing. It's Why is it completing? Wait, what? How do we decide if it's completed? When done is set. Well, this is maybe that thing about done being set before we detect the physical move. because it's moving fast or something. All right, so we set done. Because elapsed is greater than duration. I don't know why our visual end is 0.4699. Well, there is a depth cheat on rocks. So I think that we shouldn't do it this way. I think that depth cheat is way off for some reason. Yeah, so we're only... We're like popping it to the grid square indicated by the visual position at the end, which is way off what it needs to be. Okay, well, what's it called? There's a place where we check if a rock is skippable. Skippable rock Z offset. We're going to get rid of that. And things are just going to look bad for a while, but we're going to fix them through other means. Where is that? Declare skippable rock Z. And that's the definition of it. 0.47 looks just like the number we were just looking at. Hey, look. Now it's in the water. All right. No, don't record playback. All right. So now that level succeeds. Ooh, assertion failed again. It's probably again I deleted a return. We should not get here because that should have been handled here. Yeah, you know, I deleted this returning a return. Who knows how many of those I did, dude? That's like one of my most common programming mistakes, actually, is when something returns a value and you're getting rid of the return value, deleting the return. But I do that rarely enough that I don't remember that that's one of my big programming mistakes. All right. Well, this level is totally jacked. What's going on? It's like the rock is going to the wrong... Do mirrors just not work right now? Yeah, they don't work. Teleports don't work. Like, I'm just not moving to the target square. In case there's confusion in chat, this is not what the game looks like, right? This is a level that's mostly made out of cubes. The actual game looks better. B, the parts of this that look good, I'm not generally responsible for. I've done some art direction on the game, not as much as I usually do. Some of these things are things that I sort of did, like the speckly shader effect on the mirror guy, and these little dots indicating the path of the mirror, which are temporary and are going to go away. I don't know. I probably picked the color of the cubes on this level. The water itself is no longer, it used to look nicer. It no longer looks the way it's supposed to. So don't worry about how things look. Oh. Does anyone else from the team stream? I do not think so. Yeah, so I guess we're never setting the visual position. So maybe we need that. That visual position. Okay, what level was that? That was this one. Hey, I drowned. Except I didn't check for drowning upon mirroring into the water. That's a mistake. What's going on with the rotations of the guys now? They're like, what is even happening here? Oh, it's like I set the rotation of the guy. Yeah, that's no good. I guess that's been that way and I never noticed. Like I set the rotation of the guy to the target rotation at the start of the teleport. We really only want that to happen when he moves. Teleport doesn't change Ori until it's time. Boy, all these little things. Okay, so let's test the level. Looks like it's kind of working. Yep. Yep. Test this one again. That's great. Let's test this one. Really? We might have changed the timings. This is weird. See, if we change the timings, or no, okay. So this one originally was very close, and the guy is getting into the square before me, and so I'm failing to fight him for the square. Uh-oh. I think that's something in the test playback. Like it's waiting for that to finish and it doesn't. Look at all these little things. See, this is what, when you start breaking or changing the way core things work, lots of assumptions in the game break, and you have to change those and figure out what they are and all this stuff. So probably a lot of levels. If that one, this level is so simple that I have to believe that any level where you push a block and it falls probably fails. And it's like we're probably waiting for it to stop falling and it never does. Or like, not exactly, but we're waiting to see something that doesn't. I don't know what we would be waiting for. I honestly don't know. We're going to debug it, but I may not be debugging it today because I think it's time for me to end the stream right now because I got somewhere to go. But I feel it's likely that we may pick up this stream later tonight, and I would try to fix some more stuff on it. Just investigate this. I'm not going to check this in, obviously, because I just broke a ton of things. Yeah. Let's do one more. This isn't, since things are already a little broken, we don't need to be too fragile about things. We can do this. Right? I can just go here and say if this is less than 0, return. And otherwise, okay, the variables are named different things. And okay. So that was just collapsing those two procedures into one. Because you don't want glue procedures or just wrappers where you don't need them. So that's weird because here things fall into water and it's fine. I guess the difference in the static block case, it's like in the same transaction. Yeah. I don't know. We'll take a look. Sounds like we're having a real great discussion in chat. Did I find any talks from CPPCon 2018 worth considering? I have not looked at a comprehensive list of the talks, so I couldn't tell you. If anyone has suggestions about what would be useful, that would be cool. trying to figure out what the hell people are even talking about in chat. But I have no idea, dude. Something about you have to be in academia to do science, which is kind of true if you want to be cited in academic research papers, but a vast majority of actual good science is, I think, done in industry now, just because, you know, I had this rant on Twitter the other day, but most science papers right now are garbage. And we're starting to cut through that with the whole pre-registration thing. But what's going to happen is things are going to have to change, because we've set up this career structure where you're supposed to publish all these new results. Your average grad student is not going to be able to find a new result to publish anymore once we actually impose reasonable quality control on these papers. So that whole model is going to have to change, and that may be good, because then maybe it means that you actually try to become a good scientist again or something. But right now, I think academia has become just a total paper farm, and it's really a corrupt discipline for the most part. There are good people there doing really good work, but they're in the minority, really, when you consider some fields are better, so like physics is better than computer science, for example. But I just won't, if you hand me a randomly selected computer science research paper, I just won't bother to read it, because it's probably garbage, right? Now, papers written in industry have a different problem, which is that they're often trying to sell you something. So, you know, that makes a lot of those garbage, but there's not an incentive to output those papers the way there is in academia, so I think you get less of it. I don't know, man. All right, everybody. I'm going to head out and do my stuff for today. Thanks for coming by. We've obviously got some more things to fix before this task is done. So I think, assuming I'm not too tired tonight, I'm going to look into, well, this actually looks to be a pretty simple issue, actually, because I can play the game and push blocks into the water, and this is fine. So it's this thing with this not working is a problem in test playback that we need to look at. So it's not really probably a problem in our core system, but we need to be able to run the tests to evaluate if there is a problem in the core system. So we're going to have to fix that test playback problem. So that's going to be thing number one. Stuff like this could just be that we changed timings by 1 frame and it was really close. Or it could be that there's more of a real problem there, and maybe the way I would evaluate that is, first step of that is to run the test over everything and see how many levels fail. And if there was a big timing change, which there might have been because we changed all that stuff about physical move before done and all that, I would expect that to affect a lot of levels. So we'll see. I also want to tweak the timing on this level anyway. What's this level called? Skip stop. So this level was built before we had the ability to control the speed of stones on a per level basis, and now we do. And so I like to make this level a little bit easier to execute. Not too much easier, just a little bit. And that then we would have to record a new time test because the timings would definitely change at that point. All right. Thanks everybody for coming by, and I'll see you all later. We're not going to host anyone because I got to go. Maybe we'll do that tonight.